With Dirt 3 coming very soon, the Codemasters camp has been building anticipation with various video releases and media events. The latest was held at the Destiny Lounge at the Temple Nightclub, an underground club in San Francisco. Upon arriving within the lounge, you were hit with 8 large monitors filling the room with multiplayer head-to-head style. It was the multiplayer party modes that would be the focus of the evening, with less attention on actual racing and much more focus on smashing your opponents within the DC compound. We tried out various different party modes throughout the evening. First there was Outbreak, with one car being infected and spreading it to others by hitting them. The winner is the last man standing in a fender-bending game of tag. Then there was Transporter mode, where working in teams playing a variation of Capture the Flag. And then the Invasion mode, putting the drivers in a race to crush as many cardboard aliens as possible without hitting any skyscrapers. The party modes are entertaining and can provide a good amount of fun with a good group of friends. But with my focus mainly being on racing, I singled out Gin Patharaja of Codemasters in order to talk more about the racing and vehicle design in Dirt 3.
I'm here with Gin of Codemasters, and Gin, what's your job title there?
Okay, my job title is that I'm the lead car handling designer in the racing studio.
Okay. So basically, all of the cars in Dirt 3 somehow came through your hands.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're a team of 4, so we all work together to make sure that all the cars have received that extra special attention. That's right.
What's your background before we get started? How did you get involved in building sims?
Well, good question. I mean, if you're talking about my career in general, I mean, I started out as a quality assurance games tester, and a job opportunity opened up to be a car handling designer, you know, and being a bit of a gearhead and loving cars, and I've always had a bit of an interest in physics. You know, I gave it a shot. I learned the ropes. I realized there's a lot to do with the Ego vehicle editor. You know, within a matter of months, I was making my own cars using, you know, editing nearly over 400 parameters per car, and I loved it. You know, I'm hooked. I love working with racing drivers. I love working with you know, the physics teams and the level designers to make sure that the handling is just right for every single car.
Okay. 400 parameters. I mean, who would ever imagine there are 400 things? Where do you end? I mean, where do you start and where do you end when it comes to 400 parameters per car?
It's a good question. I mean, you could go on forever just changing numbers, but it really helps to be able to work with you know, a great research team who's able to procure the information of the technical specifications of the cars, and that's how it usually starts out. You get the basic technical specifications of the car. Then you work with like racing drivers or people who's experienced the limits of that car. So for example, if you're talking about the Gymkhana car, who better to talk to than somebody like Ken Block? Sure. He's always pushing that to the limit. So, so you know, we work with him to find out exactly what it's like, you know, of that car on the limit. So we give him a steering wheel with our game in, and he sits there saying, you know, you need to like make the anti-roll bars a little stiffer, or the power delivery needs to be, you know, the power needs to come in later on the RPMs, or you need to change the sort of drive bias a little bit more so that you can oversteer it on the throttle or something like that. And then we can just tweak it from there on. We just change the individual numbers to suit.
Okay, and when you get a pro driver in and they're driving, these guys, I mean, do they have sim racing or gaming background, or are they just coming in as auto drivers and converting to sim racers for the day?
Well, basically, they can come from anywhere, really. I mean, they have to start off as pro drivers because, you know, they're the ones, we're getting them for their experience on that specific car. They don't really have to be a massive gamer. It helps. But we sit them down with a good steering wheel, and they can really tell us what happens on the limit. So, you know, how much steering forces are coming through, you know, whether they go beyond the slip angle or if they understeer the car, and they can feel all of that through the steering wheel. Our game primarily starts out being developed on the wheel, and then we adapt it for the pad.
Now, we have a lot of different cars in this game, and you mentioned getting the information about the cars from the manufacturers. In the world of racing, I mean, people are kind of tight about that. How close, how good of information do you think they give you?
Yeah, well, you know, with some cars, like WRC cars, that's particularly tricky to get information out on. But, you know, working with, as I say, the racing drivers, they can really tell you what it's like on the limit of the car. So it's all about the feeling of the car at the end of the day. some technologies mightn't necessarily be modeled, but we do go to great lengths to incorporate all sorts of things, such as fast rebound. I'm getting a bit technical here, but I mean, we were working with Drew Bowler, who made the Bowler Nemesis, and if you've ever watched that in action, it has some pretty unique suspension systems, and he's been telling us all about how when you go over a gap in the road, the wheel will drop right out in order to fill that gap, and that's in order to maintain good contact with the ground. WRC cars use a system very similar to this as well. So we modeled that on a small level to ensure that our cars can also stay on the ground, So we go to those sort of great lengths, working with individuals like Drew to make sure that we can actually model the cars realistic as possible.
I'm fascinated by groups that bring in pro drivers. I think that's a real important part of the new age of sims. What point of the development do you bring them in? I mean, are they in from the very beginning, or do you wait till you have something pretty polished? How does that go?
Well, for Dirt 3, we get them right in at the start. And it's really paid off, because you can see here today, although Gymkhana looks like a lot of fun, it is a lot of fun, but it's also very realistic as well when it needs to be. If you get that on a good steering wheel on a PC or on a console or what have you, you'll really start to appreciate what the car's like on the limit. And you can do the same on the pad. You can really feel the vibrations through the pad as well on the limit, and that's all thanks to the feedback of like Ken Block or somebody, because we want our players to be able to feel the limit of adhesion. So that might come through either the force feedback of the steering wheel or the rumble through the pad. And we simply couldn't do that without getting people like Ken Block or Chris Meek soon enough.
And we'll be right back with the rest of the interview and more Dirt 3 footage after these messages.
GamePod, the ultimate race rig for those serious about sim racing. Puts you in the driver's seat with all the controls at your fingertips. Be number one on the road, in the race, in the game. GamePod, the choice of champions.
Dirt 2 had two-wheel, four-wheel drive cars. We have the continuation of that in Dirt 3.
Without a doubt, we've got a hell of a lot more rally this time. We really listen to our fans. We've got like rally cars that date right back to the 60s. Some of my favorites, a bit like the Renault Alpine, which is the engine's in the back. It's rear-wheel drive, so it's a bit like a 911.
So you get off the gas and it just comes around?
Well, I mean, if it's in a straight line, you'd be surprised how much grip you get off, because the weight sits on the rear, and then you get a good launch out of it, you know. However, if you do that on a corner, it's a different story.
Right.
But you can get a lot of lift-off problems there, because, you start penduluming around it.
Right.
But it's all about being really smooth with the throttle. And then, of course, you got like the Mini Cooper as well, which is front engine, front wheel drive.
Right.
And it just adds to the whole experience of like off-road rallying, because before it was all just four-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. But we want everybody to experience different drivetrains, different levels of power, different levels of grip.
Right. Now, how do you go about getting those proper feels? I mean, there's a big difference between a front and rear-wheel drive car, especially off-road. How do you make them feel distinctly different?
Well, of course, the setup itself makes the car feel inherently different from anything else. I mean, the drive's going through the front, so it's naturally going to want to pull the front and go wide on the corner.
Right.
So, from that point, it's going to do it itself. The statistical information or the technical specifications also will make it different from any other car, because a Mini Cooper is very light. You'd think that would actually understeer, but because it's so light and the grip and the contact is as good as most other cars in its class, it actually launches really quickly around them corners.
And the car just follows the front wheels.
It's almost like that. It doesn't even need the rear wheels. It's just getting dragged along.
Just put a couple of skates on the back.
Absolutely awesome little car. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about damage a little bit. Damage is something we're seeing a lot more visual damage in a lot of games, but it doesn't always carry over into the physical and what you feel in the wheel or the way the car drives. What are you guys doing for damage in Dirt 3?
Well, Dirt 3, the damage is really upgraded this time. let's talk about the visual aspects first of all.
Okay.
Well, actually in Dirt 3 you can actually limit it to visual only or visual with mechanical damage as well.
Okay.
So if you just want to play the game and you just want to see it looking really cool when it's damaged and really knacker it, you can do.
Right.
Or if you want to switch on the mechanical damage options, of course you will then suffer the performance impacts of really damaging the car.
Okay.
So how far do we go into it? Well, this time around you're talking like tire punctures, full tire blowouts as well. You can still drive on it if you really wanted to. You could damage things such as your radiator, which will slowly bleed the life out of the car.
Okay.
Because your engine will overheat and you'll lose performance that way.
Okay.
You can also make damage to axles and certain suspension, brake systems. You could damage your exhaust.
Wow.
All of those sort of things will either add up to either add friction to the axle or create an offset or a sort of judder or what have you.
Right.
You'll feed that through the force feedback on the pad or on the steering wheel. And you can do all those sort of things with the mechanical damage on.
Will you get like camber caster changes from hitting something on the wheel?
Yeah, it changes your contact patch on the ground. So of course, if you understeer into a wall and you do your front left wheel in and what have you, you could probably offset its angle so the whole toe is completely changed, and that actually would have an effect on its grip levels as well. It'll start to try to push the car to one side or what have you. It depends on what actually happens. So yeah.
What about like setup? So I go to set up the car for a stage. Do you have a lot of options? Is it simplified? How do you feel about that?
Now that's a good question because setups in Dirt 3 is a big thing. I mean, Dirt 2, we had setups before, but this time, we give you 3 base setups for each car. So if you were to take, I don't know, your Subaru Impreza and you were to go on the Finland stage, we'll give you a gravel setup. Which is a good all-round setup for most surfaces, but obviously benefits the gravel surface. If you were to take that same car and then go on something like a tarmac-based track, it would then stiffen the car and give you different tires. And so all of that would feel completely different to the previous setup.
Now, what do you think the biggest difference between Dirt 2 and Dirt 3 is?
Well, of course, being the car handling designer, I would go on about the car handling all day long.
So you can pat yourself on the back for that.
I will pat myself on the back for that. But of course, the other thing is that the tracks, I'll talk about the tracks first of all. I mean, the tracks in Dirt 3, you can see they're far more deformed, more realistic. You've got lots of potholes and off-camber surfaces as well to deal with. So it's all about reading the surface in terms of their material and the kind of undulation as well.
Right.
So the tracks are amazing in Dirt 3.
Okay.
The next thing is, of course, we've got the car selection. Absolutely amazing car selection. That goes back to cars that are just like less than 200 bhp, really old school, to like real cutting edge WRC cars with like the fast rebound systems we talked about, anti-lag, all of those sort of things. So real instant response. You got to be really on it to really kind of handle that sort of beast as well. So the car selection's great as well.
Okay.
But Dirt 3, you see we're really advertising, really pushing Gymkhana. Now what is Gymkhana? Well, Ken Block's been doing a lot of, getting a lot of news on YouTube with his drifting antics on YouTube, and we see that as a good fit for Dirt. And so we brought it into the game, and you can really see that it's opened up a real good social aspect. People just want to freestyle and drift around things and stuff. So, we made sure that the car feels realistic to fit within the game. Designers have put together some really good party modes, which is like capture the flag or, invasion, in games like that, party modes for social aspects. And it's worked out really well. So Gymkhana is a big thing as well.
Now we're playing it on the Xbox here today. It's on the PS3 and the PC. Is there a difference in platforms? Or are they all completely identical?
They're all completely identical. I think obviously the PC, depending on your hardware, you'll be able to get better graphics out of it or what have you. The PC also benefits from the D-Box, as we spoke about before. And the reason why I talk about the D-Box so much is because it actually feeds the physics directly into the seat again, just like the wheel.
What percentage of the game, Dirt 2 had a good variety of racing. I know there's been a big push for rally racing, Gymkhana. What percentage of the game is rally racing?
Yeah, it's 60% of the career mode is rally racing now. So you go through the Dirt Tour, you're looking to experience a lot of rallying now. but it's not just the same old, same old. We're talking, you know, a good variety of cars now. We spoke about the Mini Cooper or whatever as well, but you're talking about other cars such as the BMW M3, things like that as well. You know, there's a lot to experience there. Front engine, rear wheel drive, different drivetrains, you know, Group B as well, of course. You know, one of my favorites. You know,
you talked a lot about wheels. You built this from the wheel inward, was your wording, or outward? What kind of wheel support, especially on the Xbox, I guess? Are you going to support the Fanatec wheels?
The Fanatec wheels are supported in our game, they are. For the PS3, we've got the G25, G27 series, and the new T500 RS by Thrustmaster.
Right.
We've also got, on the PC, those two wheels mentioned as well.
So the T500 will work on the PS3?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Because people are still a little gray on that wheel and what games will and won't work with it.
It'll even work on the PC as well. So you take the T500, stick that on the PC, and believe me, there's a lot of force out of that machine, you know, so you got to have your forearms ready, you know.
All right, well, again, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We're very much looking forward to the full version of Dirt 3, but having fun here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.